Chapter 2. Engineer. Originals aren't orange, but they are the best engineers in the galaxy. Maybe it's in their genetic makeup, or maybe it was that they learned to read schematics before they could read language. Whatever, everyone also knows they come in two sorts, male and female. The males are solid and dependable, quiet and efficient. They take their place in a ship's crew like they were born for it. And then there are the females. Always born twin. Identical twins that stay together till death. You never see a single original female ever. And they are reputed to be more excitable, more unpredictable, and much less reliable. And the common talk was that they never stopped talking. So when Mia said she wanted an engineer, Cal knew exactly what he needed to look for. What he hadn't decided was how he was going to pay for him. The environment system of the Sea Stallion followed the hours of the standardized day, and according to the ship, they were back landed on Grand Bazaar mid-morning. I took it easy that time, Mia said as they stood looking at each other in the control room. Only a few hours ago they were half the galaxy away. Your orders now, Captain. Get more good-paying freight, and investigate finding an engineer, Cal said, a little queasy still from the fast ether trip, and still giddy with the pleasure of having done the trip in his own ship. Would you consent to walking by my side? She nodded and he reached for her hand. Outside, she said playfully. Get some tongues wagging. Outside the ship, Cal couldn't see many tongues to see them wagging, but he took firm hold of her hand, enjoying its soft warmth as they walked side by side toward the main entrance of the bazaar. 2 credits entrance fee got them inside for 24 hours. Engineer first, Mia said. I know where to look. She'd spent much more time in this bustling hall, so he let her drag him behind, his mind still foggy and his attention more on the hand gripping his. This one only. 2000, a penetratingly metallic voice screeched close to his ear, followed by a girl's squeal. Cal had to look, even though no one else seemed to be paying attention. The being talking had scales from head to toe. Not a species he knew. The being's head was huge and he had a long scaly arm out gripping the arm of a smaller pure white-skinned woman, and that woman was chained to another one the same. Identically the same. This species he knew original females. Mia had stopped pulling his hand and he was able to get closer to the argument. Both originals were crying, and the scaled creature was maintaining a firm grip on the arm he was claiming. What was a man to do? 4,000 for both those women, Cal yelled. Sail now. He really had no idea what a pair of original females was worth, but it must have been enough for the trader to get excited. Credits, the trader called to Cal. Credits first. At least the scaly creature had released his grip on the girl. My wife will pay, Cal said, nodding toward Mia. They're mine now. Mia had her terminal out and was keying in the amount, the trader eager for the final confirmatory beep. Original always trouble, he grumbled as he handed Cal the chain holding the 2 women. I'm buying the women, not the chain, Cal said, the trader forced to kneel to unlock the leg loops. The instant the originals were free they scampered to wrap their arms around Cal. Maybe we should go back to the ship now, he said to Mia, seeing a smile rather than the scowl he'd expected. Then he was even more surprised when Mia came closer, and reaching over the twins, gave him a quick kiss on his cheek. The twin originals stayed tightly by Cal's side while Mia led them all back out the great hall toward the exit. Pass out stamps please, Cal asked the guards, and all 4 received passes good for the rest of the day stamped on their palms. Up until this point, the twins had been quiet, but that changed as they left the noisy hall and were walking toward the parking area. With more space to walk they changed position so they were walking in a line across, all holding hands with the twins in the middle. Now the originals began chattering to each other, telling how nasty that creature had been and how bad he smelled and how great it was to finally be out of that place. I'm Cal and Mia is my pilot, Cal said when he thought he had a chance to interrupt. What's your names? Kira, the one closest to him said in a sing-song voice. Kyra, the other twin said. Thank you for taking us. Then the pair resumed talking to each other, describing the different ships visible in the distance and discussing their good and bad points. Cal looked over at Mia and shook his head, but she only grinned back. 3 women in a ship. What was he thinking? The chatter became more animated as they turned toward the Sea Stallion, and it was obvious that was their destination. It's a Mark III, one twin said. It's a Mark III, isn't it? The bigger thruster igniter cover, her twin said. And the smoother coil cover. It is a Mark III, Mia said. And it's our new home. Cal felt hands pulling him ahead while the twins continued listing all the features that made it a Mark III. When they arrived at the main hatch and all hands were undone, the twins had fingers caressing the nameplate, tracing the letters, but when Cal opened the hatch, the twins stayed by the door, looking back at him. It's ancient tradition that I carry my women over the threshold, he said, and he had 2 girls fighting to grab him around his neck, and it felt like he was being pulled over as they tried to climb up. With a hand around each backside he was able to struggle both giggling girls through the doorway and drop them back on the floor inside while Mia stayed laughing behind him. Now officially part of the ship, the twins were racing off, hands out, touching every part of the vessel in reach while they chatted to themselves of what they were seeing. They're young, Cal said quietly to Mia. Hardly out of school. And now they've found their home. They'll fit in well. I keep feeling they're almost like our children, he said. I know it's a crazy idea, but I can't get it out of my mind. Well Dad, we better go after them and supervise, Mia said, still standing back at the entrance. But that would make you Mom, and I still haven't carried you over the threshold. Just this once, Mia said, and he carefully lifted her up, her head warm against his cheek, and slowly carried her over the entrance and beyond. He didn't want to put her down, but he had to. In the corridor beyond were the squeals of excited girls. He really wanted to kiss her too, but that was not right. Seems like your brood needs some supervision before they take over this ship, Mia said. They'll never leave you now, you know. 2 excited women had completely taken over the control room. All the screens activated, even the main one that was supposed to be the weapons control, but now it displayed a service menu offering options to select. Let them do their tests, Mia said when she saw Cal's face. They know what they're doing. He wasn't so sure, but watching the women at work, it was obvious they knew more than he did. After minutes of silently watching, while feeling completely unwanted in his own ship, he decided his best action was to rest on his bed, at least he could do that. Soon he was joined by Mia sitting on the edge. You did the right thing, she said quietly. I couldn't have found a better engineer. I'm sorry I used your credits and called you my wife. I'll make it up to you somehow. I'm not. You did what was needed. But your real husband. She didn't answer. Sorry. That was wrong of me. Just hold me, she said and wriggled close, molding her body into his, and the warmth of her took away all need of further speech. Us two high-pitched female voices startled Cal, and he opened his eyes to the twins standing by his head. We'll get in the middle. Mia parted first, and the twins fought to get onto the bed between her and Cal. Shortly all 4 were packed like sardines, the twins snuggled down so Cal could still see Mia's face clearly. You've got your family, Mia said, grinning at Cal. Only 10 minutes and the twins seemed recharged and ready to explore more. Can we update the charts? Mia asked before the girls got too involved in anything else. That took minutes of tapping over multiple screens and a lot of incomprehensible chatter, and then the area in front of the pilot's couch came alive with color that settled into a 3D holomap right in front of their eyes. Wow! Mia said, and Cal was still too stunned to speak. Those displays were worth more than the cost of the whole ship. How did you get that? Cal finally managed to ask. She cracked the password, one twin said. It was so old it was easy, her sister said, grinning. It still has to be calibrated though. The updates, Mia prompted. Standard charts 400, holomap 1200, and 140 credits for the extra data. I'll pay it, Mia said instantly. Now. About 10 hours download. Details of every star and planet of the whole galaxy is a huge amount of data. More tapping and a beep from Mia's terminal and they were locked into staying here for at least half a day. Mia didn't seem to care, lying in her pilot couch and manipulating the holomap display with her joysticks. Spinning moons and planets, zooming in to see the surface and way out until the planet was only a speck, while the twins were back exploring the other consoles. Eventually tiring of her playing, Mia suggested, "How about you go and see about freight while I get some food me and your girls would like?" "I was thinking," he said softly. "Is it possible to get uniforms for the twins? Something smart and with their names on it." "You softy," Mia said. "You'll owe me, you know." "I already owe you so much, a pair of happy engineers is not much more." Getting the twins away from the consoles was a problem, but Cal's offer that they could choose their own uniform helped, and the four made their way back to the Grand Hall. "We'll meet back at the ship," he said as they parted, him making for his freight contact. There were many agents offering freight, but the one Cal used was the only one he found that didn't ask too many questions. As long as you kept to the contract you agreed, he was happy. "Last delivery fast it was," the man said when he noticed Cal standing in front of him. "Good work I getting same." He was rubbing his fingers together as he spoke. "Com you giving? Faster details I be sending." "We have deal, no." "We have deal," Cal said copying his com details. 50,000 I having now but contract not. First to picking up getting job. What's wrong with it? This agent dealt with all forms of freight, and for 50,000, there had to be something very suspect. Cryo prison. 5 pods. Much risking. You waiting. I finding more better good job. Back in the Stallion, Cal wandered the now empty ship. For weeks, he'd been its sole inhabitant, and it felt like home. And now, after only a few hours of change, it felt the loneliest place in the galaxy. He spent time watching the countdown bar on the chart download, but it wasn't going any faster for all that attention. Even a shower didn't improve his mood. Then his terminal beeped advising a delivery was at the hold ramp, so he spent time moving all the cartons to the kitchen pantry, then loading the auto kitchen with the new ingredients. About half the ingredients were familiar, but the others. Most likely they were for the twins. He'd kept his menu lean and simple, mainly to save cost, but the others didn't have an ether ship to pay off. Dark now, and still he was alone, but the bazaar traded 24 hours. He turned on some of the entertainment channels on the screen, but nothing grabbed his attention. He investigated the new menu in the kitchen and settled on a childhood favorite, but it tasted nothing like he remembered. Then he lay on the bed imagining his crew being kidnapped by large-headed scaly creatures from who knows where. And then the main door clicked open, and the ship was filled with the high-pitched chatter of his engineers, and he stood up ready to welcome them back home, but he was not prepared for what approached. He was left with his chin hanging low when 3 identically clothed women burst into the control room. "The twins chose the color," Mia said quickly, the girls stepping ahead as though modeling the new outfits. "We had to wait for all the additions. Bright orange tops with yellow trim. Certainly not outfits to wear to stay hidden. And the twins chose the logo too." Both girls turned to show a large white horse standing up on its hind legs and letters circling the horse, the Stallion. "See the names," one twin said, and both turned again to highlight the chest pocket area where the first line said engineer and the second line said Kira. Cal saw Kira written on the other twin and looking back at Mia, her top read ether pilot and Mia. "We stayed with white pants," Mia said in a tone that suggested the twins had wanted something brighter. "There is not another ship that has a uniform like that," Cal said carefully. "I filled the kitchen while I was waiting." In a second, outfits were completely forgotten, and both twins raced toward the kitchen. "And you," he said limply waving toward his pilot's clothes. "It actually does go with my blue," she said smiling. "And they love it." "Thanks," he said while squeals of pleasure came from the back of the ship. 4 faces were staring at the download screen while the bar counted the minutes and then seconds. The download successful sign elicited cheers, then the new time bar for installation brought exasperated curses. 3 more hours. Mia said. It'll be midnight or more. We don't dare do anything else until it's down, Kira said, her sister nodding. Too risky. Rest, Cal said and climbed into the bed, but the others didn't seem to be in the mood, talking full speed about things they had seen on the trip. At least one of us should be rested, he muttered. His terminal woke Cal, the half-asleep face of his freight agent yawning as the connection was made. Quick job I having for you. Coming through just it being. Testing you I thinking they doing. Future more credits. I'm interested, Cal said, waiting for this great offer. People from before. Bringing pod back here. 1,000 contract only, but delivery noon being. A test you think? The man nodded, and it seemed to Cal that there was a lot he wasn't saying over the open line. Coming in person soonest landing back you being. Carefully I must be saying. Cal looked around at the others who were now all turned to him nodding. Sent details through, Cal said and watched his agent relax. Will it be safe? The best. You I be seeing soon. The connection cut before Cal could ask anything else. 2 more hours before we can leave, Mia said, then Cal's terminal chimed with the job contract. Better not to touch any screens until this installation ends. We're going into space, Kyra said. It's really happening. Her twin was twisting around. Weapons or engines? We should take turns. You do engines out and I'll do it back. Didn't you go into space to get here? Cal asked. We were in a sealed pod, one twin said. We could see nothing, her sister added. Cal wasn't sure what to think about this information. This was their first ship, and they had no experience at all. But they were enthusiastic, and they were out of whatever hell they had been in, and he was glad of that. Mia will make this a great first trip. She's the best pilot a captain could ever want, and I'm sure you two will be the best engineers possible. It was back watching the installation bar crawl along the screen, and the second the installation was complete, Cal transferred the job details to the pilot's screen and Mia activated the holomap with the track. Of course the destination was exactly the same as the last time, but seeing it on the 3D display made it seem completely new. Prepare to depart, Cal called. Hatches locked. Departure clearance accepted. Clear to depart. Mia was lying back in her couch and the twins were still trying to settle comfortably into their chairs. The hum of the thrusters had the twins cheering, and as the ship lifted and the land could be seen disappearing in the main viewport, the girls were making sounds like they were on a thrill ride in a pleasure park. Mia made the trip to orbit level a gentle affair. She seemed more interested in playing with the 3D display, but that changed when the ship was correctly positioned to enter ether space. With no real warning, she engaged the coils and the ringing sound of the ether drive grew and grew. And then they were sailing in the ether sea. Cal was expecting the holomap to go blue as the chart had done, but it stayed showing the stars and planets as they raced past. So fast it was difficult to focus, and the blur was making his head and stomach spin. Closing his eyes eased the nausea a little, but only a little. The noise of the coils filling the ship and the trembling of his seat was not helping things. The twins seemed unaffected, loudly calling out gauge readings and warning notes that passed through the screens. Their chatter continued when the ship dropped out of ether drive and the ringing of the coils receded. Coil bank 7B, one yelled out. Access from outside, the other called. Space suits, the first asked. We don't have space suits, Cal called back. Wait till we land somewhere safe. The ship was in parking orbit around the same red-brown colored planet from yesterday, and Mia had positioned the display so the holomap showed the surface of the planet below as they orbited, but the twins were side by side up front looking at the site out the main viewport. Their first real trip, Mia said softly to Cal as she got up from her pilot's couch, her face looking like a protective parent watching her offspring. We can only wait for their call, Cal said, but he was watching the twins too, and he felt like Mia looked. The girls eventually turned away from the window. "Can we check the coils when we land here?" Kira asked, her sister nodding by her side. "Not this planet," Cal said. "We don't want those people to know our ship is not perfect." That had both girls nodding. "We rest now until we get the call." That call was a long time in coming, and when it did, everyone was ready. "Hang on tight, I'm going in hot," Mia called as the whine of the thrusters increased, the twins taking her words literally, their hands gripped to the side of their chairs, but they still managed to call out readings on the plasma flow and the amount of overload Mia was applying. The landing site was the same they used yesterday, and again, 2 vehicles were waiting. Cal was in the freight hold ready when the ship came to a stop, and immediately lowered the ramp. No messing around by the ground crew either, one man guiding the freight pod up the ramp while the thrusters were still winding down. Behind the man controlling the large pod, there was another holding a briefcase-sized pod. Hearing noises behind, Cal turned to see 2 faces peeping through the hold door that quickly disappeared when they realized they'd been noticed. "This one is person-to-person delivery only," the man with the briefcase said as he came closer to Cal. Into his hand personally. "You understand?" "Absolutely," Cal said, looking down at the screen on the lid of the briefcase. The man holding lifting it up so Cal could read MLSLY. "SLY freight forwarding. Personal delivery only. I will hand it to him myself. No one else at all." "Good," the man nodded down and Cal reached out to take hold of the briefcase. The other large pod had now been lowered on the freight hold deck. "You want to check?" "No need. I only transport the freight," Cal said. That had the man smiling a little, both men now preparing to leave. Still holding the briefcase, Cal moved to the wall where the ramp switches were, and as soon as the ramp was clear, he pushed the button to raise it, standing there until the ramp was fully up and locked. "You can come and see now," he said back toward the door from the control room, and 2 girls walked through pretending they hadn't been spied before. "You can help me secure the pod if you like." First Cal opened the lid of a heavy walled box that was bolted to the wall near the ramp controls and took out a lashing strap. "One of you hold this briefcase up for me please." Kira did, and then he wrapped the lashing around the case and tightened the strap so it was holding the briefcase firmly shut. "Case in the box now," he said, then he closed the cover of the large box and slid fast the 2 massive bolts that locked the top of the box. "Now whatever is inside can't get out." Next it was the large freight pod. 2 large lashings around the whole box so even if the door came unlocked, it couldn't open. "Making sure whatever is inside stays there. I need to make sure we're all kept safe. Now let's make this ship fly." Mia had the Stallion landed on Grand Bazaar well before noon, choosing a landing spot close to the bazaar freight delivery door. With the twins helping, Cal had the ship freight hold ramp lowered and the 2 freight pods untied in record time. "Can you help to push the big pod?" Kira activated the pod's lifting function and Kyra provided the push. Far too much pushing, the pod shooting out the hold and gathering even more speed as it slid down the ramp, the twins running after it as the pod headed for the large cargo ship parked alongside. Fortunately for all, the pod's path was over the freight guiding rail, and its magnetic pull grabbed the wayward pod, turning it to run along the preset path toward the main freight entrance. By the time the twins got hands on the escaping pod, it was already making its own way toward its destination. Cal much further behind, weighed back with having to hold the briefcase-sized pod. "We thought we lost it," Kira said when Cal got close. "We'll have to hold it tighter next time," Kyra added. Cal was thinking it might be a good idea if there wasn't a next time when he heard Mia calling from the freight deck. "Would you like for me to close the ramp?" He turned and nodded and then had to walk smartly to try to catch up with the twins. The freight guide rail was buried under the paving with painted-on lines showing its path. With its hover function active, it only took a tiny push to guide the freight pod, and it was difficult to get lost since all guide rails headed toward the main freight control office. The twins were still leading when the pod entered the main doorway, but they stopped before they got right up to the control desk. Cal was able to get ahead and poke the pod toward the checking station. "Returned pod," he said, holding his terminal up ready for the receipt. "Bit of fun at your ship," the man behind the counter said as he held his scanner up toward the pod's screen. "Cyrus was saying we should submit it to Galaxy's craziest videos." The man's scanner gave an accepting beep and Cal held his terminal up ready. "Can we see?" Kyra asked. "See Cyrus over there," the man said, giving the receipt code to Cal's terminal. "You should see your face," he said toward Cal. The twins had surrounded Cyrus, and Cal came behind to see a screen showing an overhead view of the racing pod and the two girls running after it. As the twins got to the pod, the camera zoomed in to see them trying to grab the smooth surface of the box, the zoom ending up with a full-screen view of the logo on the back of the twins' uniforms, the ship name proud for the whole galaxy to see. But that was not the end. The camera quickly zoomed back to catch Cal's despairing face as he watched the situation. "Our uniforms came out great," Kira said. "I helped design that logo," Kyra added. Cyrus chose to replay the clip while Cal decided it best he stay silent. 2 more views of the clip and then the information that Cyrus was going to get the clip on the local news. "We better get back so we can tell Mia to watch it too," Kira said. "Both you wait for me back at the ship while I deliver this last one," Cal said, then toward Cyrus, "Can I slip through here?" Into the Grand Bazaar without paying the entrance fee suited Cal, and the freight control office opened right near the section of the bazaar where the freight agents had their business. Who would have guessed? Slee Freight Forwarding, the name on the briefcase-sized pod, was Cal's agent, and he knew the way to the office well. "In office," Mr. Slee said, a hand flitted toward the open doorway ahead. "Placing on table." This was the first time Cal had been into this inner office, and the condition of the office told him the reason Mr. Slee didn't ask too many questions. He already had enough loose paperwork piled around the floor. "On table," the agent said again, and Cal placed the pod directly on top of the scattered things already there. Mr. Slee making his way around the table to bend over the pod's screen and poke the password he had obviously memorized. "Is good," he said as the pod beeped, and he made to open the top. But before that, he glanced out the still open doorway, then said, "Shutting door we doing?" Cal stepped back and closed the door, staying back a little to give his agent some privacy. Coming. Seeing secrets we carrying." With that, Mr. Slee turned the pod around so Cal could see the contents. It took him a good moment to remember the proper name, but then he was sure what it was: Epturium rods. The thing that powered nearly every ship. The rods about as thick as a little finger, and as long as a hand, and each rod encased in a thick armor-glass case that contained the radiation. The thing that made these rods special was the glow. The strong purple glow a fully charged rod had. And there were 6 of them in this case, all carefully secured, and held apart in a custom-made foam matrix. Telling no one. Too many willing thieving they doing. Each rod over 100,000. More than double without certificate. "I thought these needed to be moved with special permission," Cal said carefully. "Understanding well you being." Mr. Slee reached out and pushed the lid down on the pod. "Customers needing certificate. Transport not. Certificate transport low. 1,000 standard. Non-certificate transport as much customer will paying. That way you making most credits. Not terminal. You seeing?" Cal did see. He saw very clearly. "You picking some job with terminal I sending you. Others only you knowing. Collecting payment you doing. Me you bringing 10%. The payment is only for the freight. Goods paid before freight. You know nothing. Only freight you collecting. Amount depending on risk. And I return 10% back to you. You understanding perfect. We have deal, no. We have deal," Cal said, reaching across the table to shake Mr. Slee's hand. "They said we are heroes for saving that pod," Kyra said as soon as Cal came into the ship control room. "We saved a copy for you to see. Hurry up. Kira has it ready." It's been sent out on the screens as a special local event, Mia said. She was standing behind the twins watching the screen with a definite grin. You see for yourself. The clip had been titled, "Young Girls Prevent Serious Runaway Pod Crash," and the clip ended with Cal looking distressed. They say we're heroes, Kira said. It does look like they're both heroes, Mia said. Everyone will know them and our ship now. All Cal could do was shake his head a little, and he took his mind off his hero crew by preparing the 500 credits he owed Mia on his terminal. That briefcase? Mia asked after the credits had been transferred. A freebie to prove we could do the job. We passed the test, so there is good paying work to come. Do our engineers want to see to that coil problem while we're here? We could have a quick look before the next newscast, Kira said. You can watch for us and record it, Kira said to Mia. Mia was still grinning while Cal was left shaking his head and muttering 3 women in a spaceship to himself. However, he decided to follow the twins as they scampered through the ship to get to the ladder up to the roof hatch. Even holding a handful of tools each, the engineers were through the hatch before he got to the bottom rung of the ladder. And by the time he got his head through the hatchway, there were already open access doors and the twins' heads were buried in the insides of the ether coils. He decided his best move was to stay where he was in case they needed something fetched. The girls were busy talking non-stop to each other, strings of numbers and letters punctuated with short instructions of what next to test. And then it was all over. The access doors being replaced and secured and the pair back at the hatch. You're blocking us, Kira said. We need to get down quick, Kira added. Cal had a pair of shoes following his head as he tried to race down, the twins back on the ship deck and racing for the control room. Did we miss another video? Kira called as she came through the doorway. No more videos, Mia said. You find the problem. A porcelain insulating standoff, Kira said. It's cracked, Kira added. Can we fix it? Cal asked. Porcelain. And in a high stress point, Kira said, shaking her head. We need to find a new one, Kira added. Or maybe we'll only get a used one now. In the bazaar? Cal asked. They'll not have them, Kira said. Not worth salvaging. The only place is from a wreck. The Stallion Book 1. Big Dreams but No Credits. A Space Adventure. By Mystic Alchemist. Copyright 2023-2024 Mystic Alchemist. All rights reserved. Written in Australian English. This book is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places and incidents are either a product of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual people living or dead, events or locales is purely coincidental. Cover and text written and assembled by hand without use of artificial intelligence.